All right, it's not that simple, or is it? Let's ask our Sunday Roundtable. Christina Bellantoni is senior reporter for Talking Points Memo. Also joined today by Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Karen Hunter, who's also a publisher and teaches journalism at Hunter College, and Steve Adubato, a media analyst for MSNBC.com. Great to have all of you. Oh, and Steve, author of What Were They Thinking? All right.
That's not about the Nobel Committee.
No. All right. But some people are saying that.
Exactly.
Christina, let's start with you. Is SNL on point here? We did hear a lot of folks saying this was a lot about this reversal from Bush.
Well, I mean, it's funny because it's true, right? Part of it is it's a matter of what President Obama represents. I mean, the committee really said that, this is a shift in direction. And, they didn't need to mention the words George W. Bush for that to be kind of left unsaid. I actually talked to a former Bush 43 official over on Friday, and they said, needless to say, we will not be issuing a response to the Nobel Award. So I think that they understand that just as much.
Yeah. Karen, let's talk about, I want to throw some numbers up here because we know that the president still has these overwhelming popularity ratings in Europe. Let me ask you, was this prize a rebuke of the Bush administration from your perspective?
I think it was a middle finger to the Bush administration, but I think on a larger issue, if we step back as Americans and look at what President Obama has done across the world, even before he was elected, he went to Germany and 250,000 people showed up. Recently, Muammar Gaddafi, after 40 years, came to the UN and called Barack Obama his son. Instantly, just his election, even though he was 12 days in when he was nominated, did something to the world in terms of galvanizing them and giving them hope. I think this was an award more about the promise of what Barack Obama can do than what he actually did.
But when you have those huge numbers in Europe, and then you have someone like Gaddafi calling him my son, that makes it very easy. You've got a lot of conservatives out there who say he's done everything wrong. He's popular in Europe because he's apologizing, and Gaddafi's a crazy man.
Well, what do we want? Do we want to have peace with the rest of the world? Do we want our dollar to be strong? Do we want people to think of us not as people who come in and create war every time we don't like something? Or do we want someone in office who can actually bridge that gap and bring the world together, which is what we need right now?
Karen,
Steve,
no one can disagree with everything you just said. Here's the problem. You don't get points for promise. You don't get points because you're popular in Europe and they cheer for you. And Gaddafi's saying that is not good for the president. It's not good for our country. Look, anytime the president of the United States wins the Nobel Peace Prize, we should cheer and be proud. Yes, it is a rebuke to George Bush, but it's also an embarrassment on some level and puts a lot of pressure on the president. It puts a lot of pressure on the president because how much has he accomplished? You don't think he looked a bit uncomfortable?
Yes, he did, and he said he didn't deserve it. But now,
and he's right.
But now is a time for him to live up to the promise.
He used it as a call to action.
Because he's smart.
This is a call to action. Is that what he needs to say when he goes to accept this award?
He needs to. Monica, you're absolutely right. But here's the other thing: the Republicans, the very cynical Republicans, are going to say, "Look, Obama didn't have a vote here. Right. He didn't monitor. Listen, coming off the loss in Chicago on the Olympics, this is a huge thing for our country. But the fact is, those cynical Republicans who look to score cheap points on Obama here, they're going to be seen as irrelevant. But the president, I hope, and I'm confident, will step up and say, look, I may or may not have deserved this, but more importantly, here's what I'm going to do. When he lays that out and then he begins to get some real accomplishments instead of speeches and being popular and have his ratings being high in Europe and having Gaddafi call him his son, which I will not be convinced is a good thing.
Okay.
The bottom line is that's when he begins to really meet his promise, and he deserves it.
Christina's chomping at the bit. Christina?
It does put a little bit of pressure on the president, not necessarily to, as what you were saying, of living up to those expectations, but it does put some pressure on him to push Congress to make action on climate change. Right now you've got that legislation stalled on Capitol Hill, and some of his other issues, nuclear non-proliferation, well, the fact that he's out there talking about it and trying to get other nations on board and succeeding in that, that is basically what the Nobel Committee said we need to keep going forward for.
Meanwhile, the president right now, in fact, making the decision on Afghanistan and whether or not to send troops, we know that
not too
happening.
tough a call.
Should he have done
he can't even win.
Should he have done what Il Duc Toe did and said, I don't want this, or I don't deserve it because we don't have...
There were some who were calling for the president to turn it down, and it seems that was never even an option.
It would have been disrespectful. Listen, the president is smart. He understands the politics of it, and he's going to be smart and move forward and see it as a challenge and do good things. Let's not kid ourselves.
Let's move forward here because we've got another topic still to address with all of you. Rush Limbaugh. We're learning that Rush Limbaugh will be a judge for the 2010 Miss America pageant. Christina, what's your best guess? Why did the Miss America organization want Rush?
Well, everybody knows that he can attract ratings. I mean, look at Tom DeLay on Dancing with the Stars. A lot of people watch that show that never would have watched it before, in part because they were interested in the politics of it. So that might, draw some new attention to Miss America. But at the same time, Limbaugh does judge basically everybody, so he might actually be a good judge on Miss America.
Sort of a Simon Cowell, not afraid to say what he thinks. Karen, what does Rush gain from doing this?
Well, he was such a great NFL analyst. I think that he'll just jump right off the screen here, and he's really good at judging talent and intellect and swimsuits.
And sensitive to women.
Oh man, I can't wait.
And the best thing is, no one really realizes this, Monica. The ratings grab. Look at him jumping up and down. Right. The ratings grab is that there is going to actually be a segment in the show where Rush Limbaugh puts on a Speedo.
Oh, now that is something.
Now you're just spreading. Now you're just spreading rumor.
How dare I do that?
That's not true at all.
On a real network.
Look, hey, you know what?
As opposed to Rush.
The bottom line is, too, we're all talking about it. Not only are we talking about ratings for that day, but ahead of time, would we be talking about the Miss America pageant?
No, and I'll tell you something. How about Rush? The even bigger story in my mind is potentially owning an NFL team with a whole bunch of NFL players, African-American players, saying, I'm not playing for that guy. Look what he said about Donovan McNabb, which will cost him his job as an ESPN sports analyst. This is a guy who attracts all kinds of fire because he's not a news person. He is not a journalist. He's someone who says outrageous things just to get attention. Apparently, he's pretty good at it.
Christina, do they risk losing viewers? Do they risk people coming out and saying, hey, groups coming out saying we're against Rush Limbaugh, we don't want him to be a part of this?
Sure. I mean, you risk anything in choosing anyone to do anything, really, right? Somebody's going to not like somebody. But, the ownership of NFL teams is probably not the most important issue facing a lot of people right now. And I'd say that you're going to have some protesters, but he also does have a lot of fans. So some people might start rooting for them, even though they're such a bad team.
And actually, I'll be tuning in just because as I listen to his radio show because I can't stand him. So a lot of people are going to be tuning in just for that.
A lot of people will be tuning in either way. All right, Christina Bellantoni, Karen Hunter, Steve Adubato, thanks to all of you for our roundtable.